Welcome to another video on data to decisions. In today's video, we'll be building a waterfall chart. Waterfall charts are helpful when you want to present visually how a metric or a value has moved from one point to another or one value to another. What is contributing to the change? Especially when the change contributors can be both negative and positive. For example, here I have the employee count at the beginning of the year and then employee count at the end of the year. How did that change? How did 100 employee at the beginning become 92? There are multiple contributors. Some of them can be positive, like new employees joining. Some of them could be negative, where existing employees leaving the company. So how do you present this so that the user can understand the number that changed from one point to another? Another use case is if you take the financial statements, there is revenue, there is cost, and different types of expenses. So there's positive and negative changes. All of this contributes towards the final net income for a company. So in such cases, the net income here, 97 billion for Apple, what is it made of? It is made of product revenue, 298 billion, 85 billion of services revenue, and then there's a cost of negative 214 because the company has to spend that money to make the revenue. So how all of this adds up to 97, we can visually show in a waterfall chart. And finally, it doesn't have to be like a start and an end. You can also have intermediate subtotals. For example, I can say the product revenue and the service revenue together makes up the total revenue for the company. And then I can apply a cost of revenue, which is negative 214. And then what does that mean? The total revenue, and then there's a cost of revenue. If you net that, you get to gross profit. Then you have operating expense of negative 55. That will lead you to operating income. And if you subtract all other expenses, then you get to net income. So basically, you can have multiple stages of totals that can be presented in a waterfall chart. In this video, we'll be building all these three charts step by step in Microsoft Excel. Let's get started. So we'll start with the first example in our data, which is the employee count numbers. So at the beginning of the year, we start here, new people joining, people leaving the company, and then new people who have been hired and they've not started yet, but they will soon in the future, and then people who have expressed intention to leave the company and they will be leaving soon in the future. And finally, when you add net all this, you get the end of the year headcount. So if this is the data, I'm going to select this, go to insert, go to waterfall, and create a chart like this. And Excel will automatically provide you, these options in terms of, automatically assigning the legend, and it will plot the data the best it sees it. But I'm to be honest, I'm still not sure that the formatting options that Excel Microsoft gives us total control. I still felt like I wanted to go and build as we used to do even before Microsoft introduced this waterfall chart, where we can use the column charts to create our own, and that gave us more control. It's a little bit more work, but it felt like that gave more formatting control. So here it feels limited, but if in case you have found a way to use the waterfall chart more effectively, let me know. Look forward to learning from you. The color, for example, you have these options depending on the theme you have installed. You can try one of these other, approaches, but I'm going to go with this default one for now. And the first thing we need to do is to make sure that the totals are represented as totals. So for example, after you double click and right click, it should give you the option to say format data point, set as total. Same thing, I'm going to do the year end format data point, set as total. So Excel will now set these as totals. Now, if I can click anywhere here, you see that there are show connector lines. So make sure it's checked on. And these connector lines can be, for example, I'm going to change them and make them very thin, not very thick. And I'm going to right click on the grid lines and not make them visible right now. So you can see the thin line that connects between these different columns. And the way to interpret that is at this point, year beginning is 100. then there is an increase of 20, and now we have reached 120. And from this, we drop 25, and so it's 95 here. And then the line goes to here, increases to 12 more and 107, and then it decreases and then finally reaches 92. So the connector lines are like the cumulative total. So if you follow the connector lines, you will see that the cumulative total in each step. Now you can change the colors, but I didn't find a way to control the colors very effectively in Excel's default waterfall chart. So I'm going to skip that step. But what I want to do here is tell you the gap width. So for example, if this is how many columns you have, you can increase the gap width. In that case, the totals, each of the column become narrower or thinner. But if you want them to be thicker, then you reduce the gap width. And if you pick 0%, these columns will be touching each other. So that's the control that we have. So I'm going to leave it like this. And the legend is automatic, so it'll show the increase, decrease, and then the total. So this is an easy way for you to create a waterfall chart. You can change the format of the x-axis. So I can change, for example, the font size of it. You can add the title. This is employee headcount change in year, and then I can still format. So some things are not possible within the waterfall chart, which we can do in some of these other charts. But this, for example, you can control the format of the chart title and then the x-axis titles as well. Now, I'm going to go to the next type of chart that we talked about, which is Apple's financials. The revenues and everything is here. So I'm just going to select the data. Same approach. We can go to waterfall, create the waterfall chart. And the main difference here I wanted to illustrate is we don't have a total at the beginning, we only have a total at the end. So in this case, double click, right click for my data point, set as total. So I'm going to set only one of these as total. And let me just format to remove all the decimals. So it'll look like this. Format grid lines, remove it. And then the connector lines, you can change the color of it and also the width. There we go. So you can see the connector line 298. The way to interpret this again is the product revenue is 298 billion. And then on top of that, you add 85 for the services revenue. And then it drops 214 for the cost of revenue. And then negative 55 from operating expense and other stuff. And finally, we arrive at 97. So this is, again, very similar to the previous, but you're trying to explain one specific metric and all the different components of it, right? And for the final option, we want to introduce subtotals. The subtotals become handy because, as I was explaining here, 298 plus 85. So do we want the user to, calculate that and then interpret the chart, or can we show the subtotals when there are many, many, contributors? And that is an example here. So I'm going to select this, same approach, go to waterfall chart. And in this case, we just have to inform Excel that we have many different subtotals. So for example, the first one is the total revenue. I'm going to double click, right click, format data point, set as total. I'm going to double click, right click, format data point, set as total. Operating income is the next subtotal. So I'm going to set that. And net income, format data point, set as total. So now I have, multiple subtotals here, and I will like to reduce the font size here. So let's zoom in. So, and the other thing is I don't want decimals, so let's take it off. Grid lines, if I can do that, no line, and then click on one of the connector lines. And if you want to change, make it a little bit more visible. So 298 plus 85, then the total revenue is 383. So the total is clearly in a different color. And then from there, you drop 214 billion for the cost of revenue. What does that lead us to? Gross profit of 169 billion. And then you have operating incomes of minus 55, in this case, billion. So that drops it further to operating income of 114 billion. And finally, other income and expenses, it's negative 17 billion, and we arrive at 97. So this is an effective way of presenting financial statements when you want to show the subtotals, but here you can show them visually. And a good thing about this is you don't have to make the user calculate these subtotals. You're visually presenting them and making it very obvious. The waterfall chart is effective in communicating how large these contributors are and which direction, increase or decrease, these contributors are. So in this case, it's very obvious when you have a cost of revenue, it's going to be negative, but you can see how big that is compared to operating expense. The cost of revenue is much larger. In some other companies, the cost of revenue might be smaller and then the operating expense could be higher. So this is what the waterfall charts are built to help us understand the information easily with a chart visual. So if you have any questions about waterfall charts, if you have suggestions on how I can make this better, please put them in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in the next video.